Old Korean billionaire man's last wish on his dying bed was to see the black woman his first love. What he told her shocked the whole hospital. Money can buy silence. It can buy loyalty. It can even buy time, extra years, experimental treatments, specialists flown in from Geneva. But in room 1207 of Seoul's most exclusive cardiac wing, a dying billionaire was learning what money couldn't buy. The courage to face the one person he'd spent a lifetime running from. The 12th floor didn't feel like a hospital. The carpet was too thick, the lighting too warm, the silence too expensive. Even the air seemed filtered of anything ordinary. No disinfectant smell, no overhead announcements, no reminders that bodies fail and time runs out. Min-sik knew better. He lay propped against pillows that cost more than most people's monthly rent, his breathing controlled but fragile. The machines beside him whispered their measurements in soft beeps, tracking a heart that had built an empire but never quite learned to rest. Around him stood the architects of his legacy, Dae-hoon his attorney, clutching a folder like it contained state secrets. Executives whose entire careers were stitched to his name. A security detail trained to be invisible. And the medical team, Dr. Hyun-woo, head nurse Chaiwon and hospital administrator Eun-young. All speaking in the hushed tones reserved for men whose deaths would move markets. They were discussing treatment options, comfort measures, end-of-life protocols. Min-sik wasn't listening. His eyes were open but focused somewhere beyond the window, beyond the glittering Seoul skyline, beyond the glass towers that bore his company's logo. He was looking at something none of them could see. A memory shaped like a woman's face. A name he'd buried under decades of acquisition reports and stockholder meetings. Then he spoke, and the room went still. I want to see Adiz. The name landed like a stone in quiet water. Dae-hoon's hand tightened on the folder. Eun-young's polite smile froze. Chaewon's pen paused mid-note. Dr. Hyun-woo leaned forward, concern flickering across his professional mask. I'm sorry, Hyun-woo said carefully. Do you mean a family member we should contact? Min-sik's lips curved. Not quite a smile, more like the ghost of one. No, he said, his voice steady despite the oxygen tube. I mean Adiz. My first love. The woman I left behind when I decided to become this. He gestured weakly at the room, at the people, at the empire humming beyond these walls. The shock wasn't in the request itself. Powerful men had complicated pasts. What stunned them was what came next. Before I go, Min-sik continued, each word measured like a final transaction, she needs to hear the truth. Because the truth is the only thing I still own that's worth anything. That was the moment everything changed. That was the moment the hospital's longest day began. A day that would teach everyone in room 1207 that some debts can't be paid with money, and some love stories don't end with kisses but with accountability. What happened next would ripple through the entire hospital. But before anyone could understand why a dying billionaire's last wish would shock an entire medical staff, they first had to understand how to find a woman who'd disappeared into a life Min-sik's world never touched. That search would take most of the day. And what it uncovered would prove that some love stories aren't measured in happy endings. They're measured in whether you had the courage, in the end, to take responsibility for the hurt you caused. Hello my friends and loved ones. Thanks for joining me on this beautiful story. As we continue this story, kindly take a moment to subscribe to this channel, like the video, and I love to always hear from you. Where are you watching from and what time is it at your end right now? Thank you for subscribing. Dae-hoon waited until Min-sik drifted into sleep before stepping into the hallway. Dr. Hyun-woo followed, closing the door with the practiced silence of someone who'd delivered bad news in corridors like this 1,000 times. I need to ask you something, Dae-hoon said, keeping his voice low. Professionally. Hyun-woo nodded, already understanding. Mental capacity. Exactly. Dae-hoon shifted the folder to his other hand. It never left him, like it was tethered. If he's asking me to execute documents, I need to know he's competent to make these decisions. Not just today. Consistently. Hyun-woo leaned against the wall, considering. He's oriented to person, place, and time. He understands his diagnosis and prognosis. He's been consistent in his requests across multiple conversations, not just sudden declarations. He comprehends consequences, legal, financial, personal. He paused. In my medical opinion, he has capacity. This isn't delirium. It's clarity. Daehoon exhaled slowly. That's what I needed to hear. And what I was afraid of. Afraid? Because it means this is real, Daehoon said. And real has legal exposure, ethical complications, family who might contest, media if it leaks. He looked down at the folder. Last-minute changes to an estate this size, it's a minefield. Down the hall, Eunyoung appeared, moving with the purposeful efficiency of someone who'd been summoned by instinct rather than pager. She joined them without preamble. We need to discuss parameters, she said. Privacy regulations. HI. If we're contacting someone outside his documented next of kin, we need consent forms. If this becomes public and we haven't followed protocol, it won't become public, Daehoon interrupted gently. No press. No cameras. Private room. That's non-negotiable. Eunyoung's expression softened slightly, but her clipboard didn't lower. And if she doesn't want to come? If she's moved on and this reopens old wounds? We're not a social mediation service. Chaewon emerged from the nurse's station, catching the tail end of the conversation. She'd been listening, not eavesdropping, just aware in the way good nurses are always aware. He's dying, Chaewon said quietly. And he's not asking for absolution or applause. He's asking to tell the truth to someone he hurt. She looked at each of them in turn. I've watched patients die with regrets they never voiced, with apologies they never made, with love they never acknowledged. Her voice steadied. If he's asking for this, it matters deeply. Maybe not to us, but to him. Eunyoung's clipboard lowered an inch. Daehoon looked at Chaewon with something like gratitude, then turned back to the others. There's something you should see. He opened the folder. Finally, after hours of carrying it like a secret. Inside weren't just standard legal documents. There was a healthcare directive, updated and notarized. A trust addendum, dated 3 weeks prior. A handwritten letter sealed. And a typed statement with a title that made everyone lean closer. Why this transfer exists. Eunyoung reached for it instinctively, then stopped. May I? Daehoon handed it over. She read the first page, then the second. Her eyebrows rose, not dramatically but measurably. She didn't speak for a long moment. This is substantial, she said finally. How substantial? Hyunwoo asked. Eunyoung chose her words carefully. Enough to fund nursing programs, community clinics, scholarships. For decades. She looked up. This isn't a gift. It's a foundation. With governance structures, audit requirements, and community oversight. Daehoon nodded. He's transferring stewardship to her. Not ownership, stewardship. With accountability built in. When did he prepare this? Chaewon asked. 3 weeks ago, Daehoon said. The day after his prognosis became terminal. This isn't impulse. It's intention. The hallway absorbed that information slowly. This wasn't a deathbed whim. It was a plan, methodical, thought through, prepared. You knew about this, Hyunwoo said to Daehoon. It wasn't an accusation. Just recognition. I advised him legally, Daehoon admitted. I also advised him of the risks. The scrutiny. The questions. He understood all of it. He closed the folder carefully. He said legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's whether you tried to repair what you broke. Eunyoung straightened. Then we need to do this properly. Within every regulation. Every ethical boundary. Agreed, Daehoon said. I'll search for her, but only through lawful channels. Patient advocacy. Community networks. Alumni programs. No brives. No pressure. No sortguts. Chaewon nodded. And if we find her, she decides. Not us. Not him. Her. They stood there for a moment. Attorney, doctor, administrator, nurse. United by something that wasn't in any handbook. The recognition that they were witnessing a man trying to die differently than he'd lived. Then let's begin, Daehoon said. The search for Adiz had officially started. And with it, the longest day any of them would work in that hospital. Daehoon returned to room 1207 with a notepad, not a phone. If he was going to do this properly, he needed details, the kind that couldn't be guessed or filled in with assumptions. Minseek was awake, staring at the ceiling with the particular stillness of someone conserving energy they didn't have to spare. I need more information, Daehoon said, pulling a chair close. If we're going to find her the right way, I need you to tell me what you remember. Minseek's eyes shifted slowly. 25 years ago, he began, his voice thin but clear. I was nobody. Just Minseek. Working 2 jobs, sleeping 4 hours, trying to prove I could build something. Daehoon wrote. 25 years. 2 jobs. Ambitious. And Adiz, he prompted gently. She worked nights, Minseek said, pausing between phrases to breathe. Studied during the day. She saved her tips in a jar with a cracked lid. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. She wanted to become a nurse. Daehoon underlined nurse. That was something. A profession. A direction. Do you remember where she worked? Where she studied? Minseek's brow furrowed. A diner. I don't remember the name. Somewhere near the university district. She talked about nursing school, but I don't know if she ever applied. It wasn't much. But it was real, specific enough to mean something, vague enough to be honest. How did you lose touch? Daehoon asked. Minseek's expression changed. Not dramatically. Just heavier. I didn't lose touch, he said quietly. I let go. Daehoon's pen paused over the notepad. I chose ambition over her. Minseek continued, each word deliberate. Told myself it was practical. That I was being realistic. That love didn't pay bills. He swallowed. But the truth? I was afraid. Afraid I'd fail and she'd see it. So I left before she could. Daehoon didn't write that down. Some truths weren't for notes. And now? Daehoon asked. Now I want her to know I was wrong, Minseek said. Not because it changes anything. But because she deserved honesty then, and she deserves it now. Daehoon nodded once, then stood. I'll find her. But you need to understand something. He met Minseek's eyes. If I find her, she has every right to refuse. You can't use money or influence to pressure her. This has to be her choice. Minseek's gaze didn't waver. I know. Do you? Daehoon pressed. Because wanting closure and demanding it are different things. You're asking for grace you didn't give. That's not a transaction. For a moment, Minseek just breathed, and out-measured. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he said finally. I'm asking for the chance to tell the truth. If she says no, I'll accept it. I've spent 25 years running. I'm done running. Daehoon studied him, then nodded. Good. Because we do this ethically, or we don't do it at all. In the hallway outside, Daehoon found Eunyoung reviewing something on a tablet. She looked up as he approached. I need access to patient advocacy, he said. And a social work liaison. We're searching for someone who may or may not want to be found. And I won't cross privacy lines to do it. Eunyoung lowered the tablet. You're serious about this? Completely. She considered for a moment, then nodded. I'll connect you with our community outreach coordinator. She works with nursing programs and alumni networks. If your Adiz became a nurse, there might be a trail, licensure, certifications, professional directories. Thank you. But Daehoon. Eunyoung's voice softened slightly. If this gets complicated, if family contests it, if media catches wind, we need documentation that shows we followed every protocol. Understood, Daehoon said. By midday, the whispers had started. Hospitals are ecosystems. Information moves through them like blood through veins. Chaewon heard it first at the nurse's station. Someone asking who Adiz was. Then again in the break room. Then from a resident who'd overheard Eunyoung on a call. She didn't shut it down aggressively. That would only feed curiosity. Instead, she managed it the way experienced nurses manage everything. With calm authority and clear boundaries. Mr. Kim has requested a private visitor, she told staff who asked. It's personal. It's confidential. And it's being handled appropriately. Most nodded and moved on. A few lingered with questions Chaewon deflected gently but firmly. By evening, the whispers had settled into background noise, acknowledged but not amplified. Dr. Hyunwoo appeared in the hallway where Daehoon was making calls, his expression measured but concerned. How long do you need? Hyunwoo asked directly. Daehoon looked up. I don't know yet. Why? Because his window is narrowing, Hyunwoo said. Not today. Probably not tomorrow. But we're measuring time in days now, not weeks. If this matters to him, it needs to happen soon. Daehoon felt the weight of that settle. I'm working as fast as I can without compromising the process. I know, Hyunwoo said. Just understand what we're up against. By late afternoon, Daehoon had made 17 calls. Alumni offices, nursing licensure boards, community health networks. He'd explain the situation carefully each time. No names at first, no pressure, just inquiries about processes and protocols. 3 led nowhere. 4 were transferred to voicemail. 10 required follow-up. But one led to a possibility. A community health coordinator mentioned an outreach program that connected hospitals with local clinics. She couldn't give names, but she could connect him with someone who worked in that space. Someone who understood both systems. Someone who might know how to bridge Minseek's world and Adi's. Her name is Amina, the coordinator said. She's a patient advocate and community liaison. If anyone can help you do this the right way, it's her. Daehoon wrote down the contact information, then looked at the name. Amina. Not an answer yet, but a direction. He dialed the number. Amina arrived within the hour, carrying a tablet and the kind of calm competence that came from years of navigating systems most people didn't know existed. She wasn't hurried. She wasn't overly formal. She was simply present, a quality Daehoon recognized immediately as exactly what this situation needed. They met in a small conference room off the main corridor. Eunyoung joined them, along with Chaewon, who'd asked to be included. Daehoon explained the situation carefully. A dying patient, a past relationship, a woman named Adiz who'd wanted to become a nurse 25 years ago. Amina listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on her tablet. When Daehoon finished, she nodded once. You've been searching in circles, she said. Not unkindly, just factually. Daehoon blinked. I've contacted alumni offices, licensure boards. I know. Amina interrupted gently. And those are good starting points. But here's what you're missing. She set her tablet down. You're looking for someone who existed in proximity to wealth 25 years ago. But you're searching through systems that cater to people who stayed in proximity to wealth. The room went quiet. She's not hard to find, Amina continued. If you don't assume she'd be in the same world as him. Daehoon felt something shift. Not embarrassment exactly, but recognition. He'd been searching upward, not outward. Looking in private registries and exclusive networks when he should have been looking in community clinics and neighborhood health centers. Wealth narrows your lens, Amina said simply. You start to think everyone who matters must be visible from the top floor. But most people live and work and thrive in places your billionaire client never visits. Eunyoung leaned forward slightly. Can you find her? Maybe, Amina said. If she became a nurse, there are community networks. Licensing databases that are public, yes, but also professional associations, clinic partnerships, continuing education programs. She looked at each of them. But before I make a single call, I need to know something. What happens if I find her and she doesn't want to come? Then she doesn't come. Daehoon said immediately. No pressure? Amina pressed. No money offered? No guilt trip about a dying man's last wish? Eunyoung spoke up, her voice firm. Absolutely not. This hospital has privacy policies and ethical standards. We're facilitating contact, not coercion. If she says no, that's the end of it. Amina studied them both, then nodded. Good. Because I won't be part of anything that puts pressure on a woman who's built a life without him. She opened her tablet and began working. Fingers moving quickly across the screen, pulling up databases and directories that Daehoon had never heard of. Community health networks. Regional nursing associations. Licensure renewals filtered by timeframe and specialty. 20 minutes later, Amina looked up. I have a lead, she said quietly. The conference room felt smaller suddenly. Chaewon stopped fidgeting with her pen. Eunyoung's posture straightened. Daehoon didn't move. She goes by Adiz, Amina said. No middle initial, no hyphenated name. She's a charge nurse at a community clinic about 30 minutes from here. She's been there for 12 years. Before that, she worked in pediatric care at a county hospital. Daehoon exhaled slowly. She's real. She's very real, Amina confirmed. And she's local, which means she's been here in this city this whole time. She paused. They lived in the same city for 2.5 decades and never crossed paths. That's not coincidence. That's how different their worlds are. The weight of that settled over everyone. What now? Chaiwon asked. Now I call her, Amina said. But I do it respectfully. I explain who's asking, why they're asking, and I make it very clear she has the right to refuse. No pressure. No manipulation. What do we tell Min-sik? Eun-young asked. Nothing yet, Daehoon said. Not until we know if she's willing. Amina stepped into the hallway, phone in hand. Through the glass wall, they could see her talking, calm, measured, professional. The conversation lasted 3 minutes. Maybe 4. When she returned, her expression was unreadable. She asked one question. Amina said. They waited. She wanted to know if this was about publicity, about being seen with him, about cameras or headlines or anything that would turn her life into a spectacle. And you said? Eun-young prompted. I told her the truth, Amina replied. No press. No cameras. Private room. She can leave at any moment. This is between her and him, no one else. What did she say? Daehoon asked, barely breathing. Amina's expression softened, just slightly. She said she'd come. The relief in the room was immediate but restrained. Chaewon's shoulders dropped. Eun-young nodded once, professionally, though her hands loosened their grip on the clipboard. Daehoon closed his eyes briefly, then opened them. How long? He asked. She's finishing her shift, Amina said. She'll be here within the hour. Daehoon stood. I need to tell Min-sik. Wait, Chaewon said suddenly. How is he? Physically. Daehoon paused. Why? Because Dr. Hyunwoo mentioned earlier that Min-sik's vitals have been dipping, Chaewon explained. Blood pressure dropping. Heart rate irregular. He's exhausted. If he's going to have this conversation, he needs to conserve what strength he has left. Daehoon absorbed that. What do you suggest? Tell him she's coming, Chaewon said. But keep him calm. No excitement. No stress. Let him rest until she arrives. Save his energy for what matters. Daehoon nodded slowly. Understood. He returned to room 1207, where Min-sik lay with his eyes half closed, breathing shallow and steady. When Daehoon entered, Min-sik's gaze focused. Did you find her? His voice was barely above a whisper. Daehoon moved to the bedside. Yes. And she's coming. Min-sik's eyes closed fully. His chest rose and fell, once, twice, and then he spoke, so quietly Daehoon almost missed it. Thank you. In the hallway, Amina gathered her things. Before she left, she turned to the group one last time. She's on her way, Amina said. But remember, whatever happens in that room, it's theirs. Not ours. We're just witnesses. And with that, the hospital's longest day entered its final act. She arrived just after 7 o'clock, when the hallway lighting had shifted from clinical bright to evening dim. No entourage. No annoncement. Just a woman walking through automatic doors in navy scrubs under a winter coat. Her hair pulled back in a practical bun, exhaustion visible in the set of her shoulders. Chaewon saw her first, recognized her somehow, though they'd never met. Maybe it was the way Adiz moved. Purposeful but hesitant, like someone who'd made a decision but was still questioning it with every step. Adiz? Chaewon asked gently. The woman stopped, turned. Yes. Up close, Chaewon could see the signs. Tired eyes that came from a double shift, not from crying. Hands that showed years of hand-washing and glove-wearing. A competence that sat in her posture. The kind nurses recognized in each other immediately. I'm Chaewon, head nurse on this floor, she said. Thank you for coming. Adiz nodded once, but didn't smile. Where is he? This way. Chaewon began walking, then paused. But before we go in, I need you to know something. Adiz waited. You can leave at any time, Chaewon said quietly. You don't owe him this conversation. You don't owe him anything. If it becomes too much, or if you simply change your mind, you just stand up and walk out. No one will stop you. No one will judge you. Adee studied Chaewon's face for a long moment. Then her expression softened fractionally. You're protecting me. I'm respecting you, Chaewon corrected. Same thing sometimes. Adee took a breath. I understand. And I appreciate it. But I'm here now. Let's not make this longer than it needs to be. Chaewon nodded and led her down the corridor. Room 1207 felt different now, like the air itself was holding its breath. Dr. Hyunwoo stood near the monitors, alert but unobtrusive. Daehoon had positioned himself by the window, folder still in hand. Eunyoung had excused herself, giving the moment space, but Chaewon knew she was nearby, managing protocols even now. Min-sik was awake, propped against pillows, his breathing controlled but fragile. When Chaewon opened the door and Adee stepped through, something shifted in the room's rhythm. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Just present. Min-sik's breathing changed. Not worse, not better, just different. Like his body recognized something his mind had been holding at a distance for 25 years. Adee stopped a few feet from the bed. She didn't rush forward. Didn't recoil. Just stood there, looking at him with the clear-eyed assessment of someone who'd spent decades evaluating patients, reading vitals, measuring what was real versus what people pretended. She saw a dying man. Nothing more. Nothing less. Min-sik, she said. Not a question. Just a name, spoken plainly. He exhaled, long, careful, like he'd been holding that breath since she walked in. Adee's. His voice cracked on it, but he didn't look away. I wasn't sure you'd come. I wasn't sure I should, she replied honestly. Her tone wasn't cold, but it wasn't warm either. It was neutral. Professional almost, like she was creating distance on purpose. But I'm here. So say what you asked me to hear. The room went very still. Chaewon felt it. That particular tension that comes not from shouting or drama, but from years of silence suddenly given permission to break. Daehoon stood motionless by the window. Dr. Hyunwoo's eyes flicked between Min-sik's monitors and his face, ready to intervene medically, but respecting the moment enough not to interrupt prematurely. Min-sik looked at Adee's, really looked at her, and for the first time since Chaewon had met him, she saw something other than control in his expression. She saw regret. Real regret. Not the performative kind people displayed for cameras, but the quiet, bone-deep kind that sits in your chest and never fully leaves. I need to tell you the truth, Min-sik began, his voice thin but steady. Not because it changes anything. Not because I expect forgiveness, but because the truth is the only thing I have left that's worth anything. Adee's didn't move. Didn't nod. Just waited. Min-sik swallowed, gathering strength. I didn't become powerful because I stopped loving you, he said, each word deliberate and careful. I became powerful because I was trying to outrun the regret of how I left. Adee's expression didn't change, but Chaewon saw her jaw tighten fractionally. Min-sik continued, pushing through exhaustion and oxygen deprivation, and the simple physical cost of honesty. I used your love as proof that I was worth something, he admitted. You looked at me when I had nothing and you didn't flinch. You didn't need me to be more than I was. He paused, breathing carefully. And when life got hard, when the risks felt too big and the future felt too uncertain, I chose ambition. Not because I stopped caring, but because ambition felt safer than staying. His hands trembled slightly against the blanket. You deserved a partner, Min-sik said. Someone who would build a life with you, not run from it. I gave you a goodbye that sounded like logic and reason and practicality. His voice dropped. But it was fear. I was afraid I'd fail, and I couldn't bear for you to watch me fail. Adee's finally spoke, her voice low and controlled. You disappeared, she said. No explanation. No real conversation. Just gone. I thought I was a chapter you were ashamed of. Something you needed to erase to become who you wanted to be. Min-sik shook his head, a small, weak movement. No, he said, and his eyes glistened. You were the only chapter that was true. Everything after was me trying to prove I didn't need what I'd walked away from. Trying to build something big enough to cover the hole I'd created. The monitors beeped softly. Dr. Hyunwoo shifted slightly, watching the numbers, but didn't interrupt. Chaewon felt her throat tighten. She'd watched people die with lies still on their tongues, with apologies they never gave, with truths they never spoke. This man, this billionaire who'd built empires, was trying to die differently. Min-sik looked directly at Adiz, and in his eyes was something Chaiwon recognized from decades of nursing. The look of someone who'd finally stopped running from their own conscience. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," Min-sik said quietly. "I'm asking you to let my last act match my first promise." And with those words, the room's weight shifted from confession to something else entirely. Adiz didn't move closer. She stood her ground, arms crossed loosely, not defensively, but like someone who'd learned to protect herself without building walls. "What was your first promise?" she asked, her voice even. Min-sik's breathing was labored now, each word costing him something physical. But his eyes stayed clear. "That I'd never waste what you gave me," he said. "You gave me belief, confidence, the feeling that I didn't have to prove anything to be worth loving." He paused, gathering strength. "And then I spent 25 years trying to prove everything to everyone except you." Adiz's jaw tightened. When she spoke, her voice was controlled but edged with something sharp. Not anger exactly, but the compressed pain of years. "You didn't just leave, Min-sik," she said quietly. "You erased me. No conversación. No real explanation. Just a note that said you were choosing your future, like I wasn't part of it. Like I was something that happened to you, not someone who mattered." She took a breath, steady and deliberate. "Do you know what that does to a person?" she continued. "To be looked at like you're everything one day, and then nothing the next? I thought maybe I'd embarrassed you. Maybe I wasn't educated enough, polished enough, light-skinned enough for the man you wanted to become." Min-sik's face crumpled, just slightly but enough. "No," he said, voice breaking. "It was never about you not being enough. It was about me being terrified I wasn't." Adiz didn't soften. "Then you should have said that. You should have trusted me with the truth instead of deciding for both of us what we couldn't handle." "You're right," Min-sik said simply. "No excuses. No qualifications. Just acknowledgement." The room held that for a moment. A dying man accepting blame without asking for absolution. Dr. Hyunwoo shifted slightly, eyes on the monitors. Min-sik's heart rate had elevated. Not dangerously, but noticeably. His oxygen saturation dipped. Hyunwoo caught Chaewon's eye, a silent question. "Intervene?" Chaewon shook her head fractionally. "Not yet." Min-sik continued, pushing through the physical cost. "I can't undo what I did," he said. "I can't give you back the years I took when I left. I can't erase the questions you carried or the pain I caused." He swallowed. "I'm not asking for comfort. I'm not asking you to make this easier for me. I'm just asking you to hear me say I was wrong." Adiz's expression flickered, something between grief and vindication. "Why now?" she asked. "Why wait until you're dying to care about the truth?" "Because I'm a coward," Min-sik admitted. "I spent decades telling myself I'd made the practical choice. The smart choice. That love was beautiful but business was survival." His voice dropped. "But the truth is, I've been running from this conversation since the day I left. Running from the look in your eyes when I told you goodbye. Running from the fact that I chose fear over courage and called it wisdom." Hyunwoo stepped forward just slightly. "Min-sik, your vitals." Min-sik's eyes flashed, not with anger, but with sudden clarity and force. "Don't treat my conscience like confusion," he said firmly, looking directly at Hyunwoo. "I know exactly what I'm saying. I know exactly what I'm doing. I've built companies. I've negotiated acquisitions. I've made decisions that moved markets." He took a breath. "This is not delirium. This is the first clear decision I've made in 25 years." The room went silent. Hyunwoo held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Understood." Dae-hoon, who'd been motionless by the window, quietly checked his watch and made a note in his phone. Not obviously, just a small, professional gesture. Time-stamping lucidity. Documenting capacity. Protecting the legal integrity of whatever came next. Chaewon watched it all with the particular weight nurses carry when they witness something rare. A powerful person choosing accountability over image, truth over comfort, dignity over denial. She'd seen people die angry, die confused, die begging for more time. But this, A man using his final hours to take responsibility for hurt he'd caused was something different. Minsik turned his attention back to Adiz. I'm not asking you to forgive me, he said clearly. Forgiveness is yours to give or withhold, and either choice is right. I'm not asking you to make my death easier by pretending the past doesn't matter. He gestured weakly toward the folder in Daehoon's hands. I'm asking you to let my last act match what my first promise should have been. Adiz's eyes followed the gesture to the folder, then back to Minsik. What are you talking about? Minsik looked at Daehoon, who stepped forward carefully, placing the folder on a side table within Adiz's reach, but not forcing it into her hands. No pressure. Just presence. What is that? Adiz asked, her voice suddenly wary. Minsik's exhaustion was visible now. The conversation had drained him physically, but his voice stayed steady. It's everything I can still do, he said. Not to buy your love. Not to rewrite history. Not to make myself feel better about dying. He paused. But to fund the future you tried to build when no one funded you. Adiz stared at the folder like it might contain something dangerous. You're giving me money, she said flatly. No. Minseok gerektif. I'm giving you responsibility. Daehoon spoke for the first time, his voice professional and clear. It's a trust and foundation, he explained. Structured oversight. Independent board. Annual audits. Community accountability. He met Adiz's eyes. You wouldn't be alone in managing it. But your signature would matter. Your values would guide it. Your understanding of what communities actually need would shape it. Adiz's hand moved toward the folder, then stopped. Why me? Minsik's voice was barely above a whisper now, each word deliberate. Because you were my first love, he said. And you were my first lesson in what dignity looks like. I betrayed that lesson. I walked away from it when it got hard. His eyes glistened. I want to repay it. Not with romance. Not with nostalgia. But with responsibility. The thing I should have offered you 25 years ago. The monitors beeped softly. Dr. Hyunwoo watched the numbers climb and fall. Chaewon felt something tighten in her chest. That particular ache that comes from witnessing truth spoken too late, but still spoken. Adiz stood perfectly still, staring at the folder. And the whole hospital, every person in that room, understood finally what had shocked them. Not a scandal. Not a secret. Not a dramatic reveal. Just a dying billionaire choosing accountability over legacy. Choosing to fund someone else's dignity instead of his own monument. Choosing, finally, to stop running. Adiz didn't reach for the folder. She just stared at it, like it was a test she hadn't studied for. Daehoon stepped back deliberately, putting physical distance between himself and the documents. No pressure. No urgency. Just space for her to process. You don't have to decide anything right now, Daehoon said quietly. You don't have to decide anything at all. This isn't contingent on forgiveness. It's not conditional on you staying in this room, or speaking to him again. It simply exists. Adiz's eyes flicked to him, sharp and assessing. What exactly is it? Daehoon opened the folder carefully, not pushing it toward her, but making the contents visible. A trust and foundation governance structure. It funds nursing scholarships, community health clinics, and continuing education programs for healthcare workers in underserved areas. He paused, letting that land. The foundation already exists, Daehoon continued. Minsik established it 3 weeks ago. What's in this folder is the governance transfer, giving you decision-making authority over how those resources are allocated. Adiz's expression shifted, not softening but sharpening. How much are we talking about? Enough to fund multiple programs for decades, Daehoon said. But the amount matters less than the structure. You wouldn't control it alone. There would be oversight. What kind of oversight? Adiz asked immediately, her voice steady and professional. This wasn't a woman overwhelmed by sudden wealth. This was a charge nurse evaluating a care plan for gaps and risks. Daehoon recognized it and respected it. An independent board, he explained. Quarterly audits. Annual reporting requirements. Fiduciary duty standards that legally bind you to act in the foundation's best interest, not your own. And conflicts of interest? Adiz pressed. What happens if I want to funnel money to a clinic I work at? Or hire my friends? What stops this from becoming nepotism with a non-profit label? Daehoon actually smiled, small but genuine. Exactly those questions. That's why there are safeguards. Any personal benefit above a certain threshold requires board approval. All major decisions require transparency documentation. Independent evaluators assess impact annually. Adiz crossed her arms. Who picks the board? You do, Daehoon said. Within parameters, at least one healthcare professional, one community advocate, one financial oversight expert, one legal advisor. No one who's financially dependent on Minseek or his companies. She absorbed that, then turned to Minseek. Why community clinics specifically? Why nursing programs? Minseek's breathing was labored, but his eyes stayed focused on her. Because that's what you wanted to build, he said softly. 25 years ago, you talked about how nobody funded the work that mattered. How hospitals in rich neighborhoods got donations while community clinics scraped by. You wanted to change that. Adiz's jaw tightened. You remember that? I remember everything, Minseek said. I just spent 25 years pretending I didn't. Eunyoung stepped forward from where she'd been standing near the door, her presence suddenly more visible. I need to clarify something, Eunyoung said, her administrator voice firm but not cold. If you accept this, there will be no press conference. No public announcement linking your name to his. No photo opportunities or media narratives about reunited love or deathbed romance. She met Adiz's eyes directly. Patient privacy applies here, Eunyoung continued. What happens in this room stays in this room. If you choose to participate in this foundation, that's your decision to make publicly or privately. But this hospital will not facilitate a spectacle. Adiz nodded slowly, something like relief crossing her face. Good. She turned back to Minseek, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of someone who'd been underestimated too many times to let it happen again. I need you to understand something, Adiz said. I will not be part of a redemption story. I will not be the prop that makes your ending feel meaningful. I will not smile for cameras or give interviews about how love conquers all or how you found your way back to what matters. Minseek nodded weakly. I know. Do you? Adiz pressed. Because this, she gestured at the folder, could very easily become about you. About your generosity. About how the great Minseek had a conscience after all. And if that's what this is, I want no part of it. It's not, Minseek said, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm not buying love, Adiz. I'm not buying forgiveness. I'm not even buying peace of mind. He paused, each breath effortful. I'm funding the future you tried to build when no one, including me, funded you. The distinction landed. Chaiwon, watching from near the monitors, felt it in her chest. The difference between transaction and responsibility, between image and integrity. Adiz stood very still, processing. Then she spoke, and her words carried the authority of someone who'd spent her career making life or death decisions with incomplete information. I need one thing before any decision, she said. What? Daehoon asked. Proof, Adiz said simply. Proof that this will actually serve people and not headlines. Proof that the governance structure isn't just window dressing. Proof that if I walk away tomorrow, the foundation continues to function according to its stated mission. She looked at Minseek. I need to know this isn't about me, she said. That it's about the work. Because if this is just another way for you to feel less guilty about dying, I won't participate in that either. Minseek's eyes glistened, but he didn't look away. The foundation continues regardless, he said. With or without you. It's already funded. Already structured. Already operational. His voice cracked slightly. I'm not offering you charity. I'm offering you authority over something that will exist whether you accept it or not. Because you understand what communities need better than I ever could. Daehoon stepped forward. I can provide documentation. Incorporation papers. Initial funding transfers. Board appointment processes. Everything that proves this isn't dependent on a single conversation or a single person's participation. Adiz nodded slowly. Show me. And with that simple request, show me. The conversation shifted from emotion to evidence, from sentiment to structure, from a story about love to a story about what love, done right, actually looks like when it tries to repair the harm it caused. Dae-hoon spread the documentation across the side table methodically: incorporation papers, funding transfers, board appointment procedures. Adiz leaned over them, reading with the careful attention of someone who'd learned not to sign anything without understanding every clause. While she read, Dr. Hyunwoo moved quietly to Min-sik's bedside, checking vitals with practiced efficiency. The numbers told a story the room could feel. Blood pressure dropping, oxygen saturation inconsistent, heart rate irregular. Not catastrophic yet, but narrowing. Min-sik, Hyunwoo said gently, I need to ask you some questions. Min-sik's eyes focused on him with effort. Go ahead. What's today's date? Saturday, January 17th. Where are you? Seoul. Private cardiac wing. Room 1207. Do you understand what you're signing? Min-sik's gaze sharpened despite his exhaustion. I'm transferring governance authority of a charitable foundation to Adiz. With oversight structures, community accountability, independent audits. He paused for breath. I understand the legal implications. I understand it's irrevocable. I understand I won't control how she uses it. Hyunwoo nodded slowly. And you're making this decision of your own free will? Yes. Hyunwoo glanced at Dae-hoon, then back to Min-sik. You still have capacity, but your window is getting smaller. If you're going to do this, it needs to be now. Across the room, Adiz looked up from the documents. These are legitimate, she said, sounding almost surprised. The governance structure is real. The safeguards are enforceable. She turned to Dae-hoon. You actually built this to work without him. That was the point, Dae-hoon replied. Adiz was quiet for a long moment, then she looked at Min-sik. I'll oversee it. But only if we're clear about what this is. What is it? Min-sik asked softly. Stewardship, Adiz said firmly. Not charity. Not romance. Not a feel-good story about second chances. Her voice steadied. This is about building systems that serve people who've been underserved. Community clinics that stay open. Nursing students who don't drown in debt. Healthcare workers who get the support they need to keep serving. She crossed her arms. If I do this, it's because the work matters, she continued. Not because of what we were. Not because of what you're trying to fix. Because communities need this, and I know how to make sure it actually reaches them. Amina, who'd been standing quietly near the door, stepped forward. You won't be alone in it, she said to Adiz. I work in this space. I can connect you with others who do too. This doesn't have to be a burden you carry solo. Adiz looked at her, really looked at her, and some of the tension in her shoulders eased. Thank you. Chaiwon watched the exchange with something shifting in her chest. This was what leadership in nursing looked like when it went beyond individual patient care. Systems thinking, community focus, sustainable structures that outlived any single person's career or crisis. Dae-hoon prepared the final documents on the bedside table, arranging them in order. We'll need signatures. Witnesses. Standard procedure. He looked around the room. Hyunwoo as medical witness. Chaiwon as nursing witness. Eunyoung as institutional witness. He paused. Everyone here is already part of this. We don't need outsiders. They nodded. No fanfare. Just presence. Min-sik's hand trembled as he reached for the pen Dae-hoon offered. The simple act of gripping it took visible effort. Fingers that had once signed billion-dollar deals now struggled with basic motor control. Dae-hoon supported the clipboard. Hyunwoo adjusted Min-sik's position slightly, easing the physical strain. Chaiwon stood ready, watching for signs of distress. Min-sik signed slowly. Each letter took seconds. His signature, once bold and confident, came out shaky and uneven. But it was there. Complete. Legal. Adiz signed next, her signature firm and steady. Then the witnesses, one by one, documenting what they'd observed. Capacity, consent, voluntary participation. When it was done, Dae-hoon gathered the papers with quiet efficiency. It's complete. The room exhaled. Min-sik's breathing had grown more labored during the process. Hyunwoo checked the monitors, his expression tightening fractionally. He didn't say anything yet, but Chaewon saw it. The numbers shifting downward, the window closing faster now. Min-sik looked at Adiz, who stood a few feet from the bed, documents in hand. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely audible. Adiz didn't move closer, but her expression softened. Not with forgiveness exactly, but with something like recognition. "For what?" she asked. "For being my first lesson in dignity," Min-sik said. Each word was deliberate, effortful. "You showed me what it looked like to work with integrity, to serve without needing recognition, to build something meaningful even when no one was watching." He swallowed, gathering the last of his strength. "I betrayed that lesson," he continued. "I spent 25 years chasing recognition instead of meaning, building monuments instead of service." His eyes glistened. "I can't undo that. But maybe I can honor what you taught me by funding others to live the way you did." Adiz's jaw tightened. When she spoke, her voice was steady but not cold. "I'm not absolving you," she said clearly. "I'm not rewriting what happened or pretending it didn't hurt. You left, and that shaped my life in ways you'll never fully understand." Min-sik nodded weakly. "I know. But," Adiz continued, "I acknowledge what you're trying to do now. Not for you. For the people who'll benefit from it." She paused. "That's not the same as forgiveness. But it's recognition." Min-sik's lips moved in something that might have been a smile. "That's more than I deserve." "Yes," Adiz agreed. "It is. The honesty of it. The refusal to soften the edges or manufacture false resolution. Made the moment more profound than any declaration of eternal love could have." Then the monitors changed tone. Hyunwoo moved immediately, checking readings. His blood pressure is dropping. Oxygen saturation falling. Chaewon was already adjusting settings, her hands moving with practice speed. Min-sik's breathing became rapid and shallow. His eyes started to lose focus. "Min-sik," Hyunwoo said firmly but gently, "stay with us." But they all knew. The final steps had taken everything he had left. Time had run out. The monitors flatlined with a sound that was somehow both piercing and hollow. Hyunwoo moved with practiced precision, checking pulse points, noting the time, confirming what everyone in the room already knew. Min-sik was gone. No dramatic last words. No sudden clarity or miracle recovery. Just a man who'd used his final reserves of strength to do one honest thing, and then let go. Chaewon began the practiced choreography of post-mortem care. Silencing alarms, documenting vitals, preparing the body with the quiet dignity she'd given thousands of patients before him. Her hands moved steadily, but her eyes held something softer. Respect for a man who'd chosen to die differently than he'd lived. Adiz stood where she'd been standing, documents still in her hands. She didn't rush forward. Didn't collapse in theatrical grief. She simply stood, looking at the man who'd been her first love and her first heartbreak, and breathed. Just breathed. Hyunwoo approached her gently. "Are you all right?" Adiz nodded slowly. "I'm processing." She looked at him. "I didn't love him anymore. Not for a long time. But I respected what he tried to do here. That's enough." Hyunwoo nodded, understanding the distinction. Eunyoung appeared in the doorway, her presence both administrative and protective. She caught Daehoon's eye, then Hyunwoo's, her message clear without words. "No leaks. No statements. No exploitation of what happened here. I'll handle the death certificate and notifications," Eunyoung said quietly. "Standard procedure. No mention of visitors beyond family. Patient privacy extends after death." Daehoon nodded. "And the foundation paperwork is complete. The trust activates as designed. Automatically, no additional approvals needed." He looked at Adiz. "You'll receive formal notification within 72 hours. Legal counsel will be available if you need it." Adiz absorbed that. "And if I have questions?" "You have my contact information," Daehoon said. "And you have Amina's. You're not alone in this." As if summoned, Amina stepped forward from where she'd been standing respectfully at the room's edge. "Can we talk?" she asked Adiz gently. "Privately." Adiz nodded, and the two women stepped into the hallway. The corridor was quieter now. the evening shift settling into its rhythm. Amina led Adiz to a small waiting area. Empty, neutral, safe. How are you feeling? Amina asked. Adiz exhaled slowly. Honestly? I don't know yet. It's strange. He's been absent from my life for 25 years, so his death shouldn't change anything. But somehow it does. Because now you're carrying something he gave you, Amina said. Not romance. Not closure. But responsibility. Exactly. Adiz looked down at the documents. I keep thinking about all the nursing students who'll get scholarships, the community clinics that'll stay open, the healthcare workers who'll get support. She paused. That's real. That matters. Amina nodded. It does. And you know what communities need better than any board of wealthy donors ever could? You've worked in those clinics. You've lived that life. Adiz met her eyes. I want to do this right. Not as some tribute to him, but because the work matters. Then that's exactly how we'll do it, Amina said firmly. Structure it around community input. Hire people who understand the systems. Fund what actually works, not what looks good in annual reports. Adiz's expression shifted, determination replacing uncertainty. No press releases about star-crossed lovers. No human interest pieces about the billionaire's last wish. This gets announced as a mission, not a story. Agreed, Amina said. When you're ready, we draft a statement focused on the foundation's purpose. Supporting underserved communities, investing in healthcare infrastructure, funding education for the next generation of nurses and care providers. His name can be on the foundation if it has to be, Adiz added. But not mine. Not publicly. I'll do the work, but I won't be the narrative. Amina smiled slightly. That's leadership. Real leadership. Back in room 1207, Chaiwon finished her documentation and stepped out to find Hyunwoo in the hallway, reviewing notes on his tablet. You witnessed something important today, Hyunwoo said without looking up. Chaiwon nodded. I did. A man using his last hours to take responsibility instead of making excuses. That's rare. What will you remember most? Hyunwoo asked. Chaiwon thought for a moment. That consent mattered. Even at the end. Even when he was dying. Adiz had the right to refuse, to walk away, to reject the foundation, to deny him closure. He respected that. She paused. And that legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's whether you tried to repair what you broke. Hyunwoo nodded slowly. Good lesson for all of us. Down the hall, Eunyoung coordinated quietly with the administrative team. Death certificate processing, family notifications, facility protocols. Everything handled professionally, ethically, privately. No leaks. No sensationalism. Just the quiet machinery of institutional care, doing what it was designed to do. Protect dignity, even in death. An hour later, Adiz stood in the hospital corridor, coat back on, documents secured in her bag. She looked tired. The kind of tired that came from a 12-hour shift followed by an emotionally complex encounter with a ghost from her past. But she didn't look broken. She looked steady. Amina walked beside her toward the elevators. You'll be okay? I will, Adiz said. This isn't a fairy tale. He didn't rescue me. I don't get to ride off into a sunset with bags of money and no complications. She pressed the elevator button. But I do get to use resources to help people who need it. That's enough. The elevator doors opened. Before stepping in, Adiz turned back one last time, looking down the hallway toward room 1207. She wasn't rich now. She was entrusted. Carrying responsibility, not a fantasy. Stepping into stewardship, not salvation. And as she descended from the 12th floor back to the world she'd always belonged to, the world of community clinics and night shifts and patients who needed care more than stories, she carried with her a truth that would shape the rest of her work. Some love doesn't die. But the most authentic proof of love is not possession or romance or grand gestures. It's responsibility. It's respect. It's leaving the world better for the person you once hurt. Minsik had finally learned that lesson. And Adiz would make sure it mattered. Not for him. For everyone who came after.